So, legitimately, I wanted to watch this so you don't have to, but I fell asleep during the first episode. It's just so bad, it's not even worth talking about. And I don't know a single person that's been excited for The Alkalite. It's just a prime example of how Star Wars is completely dead, how Disney botched this very well loved, beloved, and established franchise. The whole reason why I started playing bad games, reviewing television, TV series, and movies was because 2020 was because since 2020, the industry has been on a slow decline towards just terrible content. And I thought it was fun to review some of that stuff because it was at least fun bad. But now it's just bad in a state of boring and nothingness. But yeah, so here's an interview regarding the cast of The Alkalite and then comparing it to, well, another one from the prequels. Which I just gotta say, the Star Wars prequels have aged like wine in compare largely thanks to how Disney has just completely botched everything, including the sequels. Which is a real shame too, because episode 7 had a lot of potential. I really did like The Force Awakens, but that's a whole other can of worms.
It's just like, but if you can't look and see that Anakin blowing up the Death Star possibly killed millions and millions of people, I'm gonna get in trouble for
You should just shut up.
It's
You
just
should
like,
shut up. I
but
love
that
you. You
is,
should
but that
shut
is
up.
the beauty of this story, and it's the beauty of like life that it's.
This is, I would say, arguably the gayest Star Wars.
Well, they cut out something there, so what did he say? I saw the initial thing on Twitter before they edit that out. He was talking about how there's no good or bad. Don't even try to hide it. There's no good or bad in Star Wars. That is exactly what Star Wars is about. It is about a balance between good versus evil. Don't even try to correct your own mistake, man. You can't censor it. We live in 2020. It's 2024. Everything gets reposted. Ugh.
By a considerable margin, and are you Star Wars? I think
Story, and it's the beauty of life that it's.
this is, I would say, arguably the gayest Star Wars. I think by a considerable margin, and
That's why it released in June.
Are you excited about that? Are you
Not the
bracing
gayest
yourself?
Star Wars. Not the.
In my world, nerds are gay.
Okay.
What world? So what? If you're a nerd, that automatically makes you gay? Well, that's a horrible thing to say. I, I don't know. It feels like that comes from, well, back in the day, like before 2010s, maybe a little after, like before 2015. It comes from the whole saying about how they would use to call nerds and the things they did gay. But now they seem to take it as pride, like, oh, if you're a nerd, you're gay. That's just my understanding of this, but by the way, that's a horrible thing to say, and bad thing to assume. Especially since a lot of the stuff that was considered nerdy back then is actually very profitable and well respected now. Like, you got entire esports. People who play video games behind a laptop can make nearly the same amount, if not more, than pro athletes. People playing football and stuff. And at least we don't get injured, so we're just built different. We've done a lot of thinking.
And are you telling me with a straight face that C3PO is straight?
They're a couple. That's what I think. But this is
C3PO is a fucking robot. What in the world was... I think... Okay,
this is more outward.
I think it's canon that R2D2 is a lesbian.
No, it is not.
Jody, can you tell us?
No real Star Wars fan thinks that. 100% they were paid to say that. I don't even think non-Star Wars fans think that. R2D2 and C3PO are robots. I have only ever... I think I've gone through my entire life without even hearing that phrase come out of anyone's mouth. Except for like in an episode of Big Bang Theory. As a joke! As a freaking joke! What in the... This is just so painful. And I'm not even a minute in. Can we get to the 300 IQ, please?
About your character? So my character, you know, she's a powerful leader. She's a powerful leader. Yes. In a very woman-centered world, which I was very excited to kind of be that, because I feel like Star Wars is very like patriarchal, so it was cool to have like this sort of woman.
You've got to... Give that cameraman a raise. Give that motherfucker a goddamn raise. This perfectly sums up the fandom. This perfectly sums up Star Wars and the state that it's in right now. Absolutely beautiful. Somebody please make that a meme. Somebody in chat, please just make that a meme. That would be... That would be swell.
Figure. And you know, she's really sort of going through a struggle, because I mean, that's Star Wars, right? Like, we're going through a struggle.
Correction. That's what it used to be. And shout out to that one girl that was cheering. I feel like there is significantly less female audience... I feel like there's significantly less Star Wars fans that are female than there were before. Because before, at least you had a good story with compelling characters to back it up. Now you just have them trying to shove down any sort of message and representation that, frankly, doesn't really belong in the Star Wars franchise. How many times does a Star Wars project have to open up with a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away for you to understand that this is not our world? Star Wars does not take place in our world. So why are you trying to implore these messages that, frankly, don't even need to be implemented into the Star Wars franchise? Because they were doing things right. You had great representation and compelling characters way before you started feeling like you needed to appeal more to a diverse audience. Like, I'm not going to be fooling anybody if I try to say, oh, well, Star Wars has an equal number of male and female ratio. No, it is definitely a more heavily male fan base. But you still got to try to keep that fan base while trying to grow the new one. And the way you're supposed to grow it is by first figuring out what worked, what appealed to that fan base in the franchise, and flush that out, like develop that more, rather than trying to just implement new stuff like an LGBTQ war or whatever in the Star Wars franchise. Because that doesn't belong. That doesn't make sense. That's not what Star Wars is about. It has no place there.
We have to go back!
Hayden's character is obviously the one that's really going through the change, and mine is much more just reactive to that. Padme's a politician. She's been a leader of many people.
The Naboo system has been invaded by the droid army.
This is sort of combining being a woman with being a politician, which is an interesting combination we don't see much of. I think the role is really sort of what the true meaning of feminism in my in my sort of interpretation of it.
Look, whatever happens out there, follow my lead. I'm not interested in getting into a war here.
So it's not, going into someplace and just desiring what men want just because you can get it.
And together.
Preach. Damn, I wish I knew that actress's name, but preach everything she says. You could just feel the authenticity and passion she has towards this compared to, like, what was going on here, and here, who just, they feel clueless a lot of times. Like, they legitimately don't know anything about Star Wars. They're just there for a paycheck.
You can get it.
And together, you and I can rule the galaxy.
And so,
well, okay, that
being
delivery could have been a
consumed
little
with
better,
the thirst
Anakin.
for power, as many of the people around her do, both men and women, she stays true to her compassion and her belief in democracy and humanity.
Couldn't have said it better. Okay, well, that's it.
People around her do.
Like, yeah, that was just an awkward way to stop. But yeah, prequels, they've, like I said, aged like wine. This new Star Wars stuff is just a train wreck. And apart from, like, The Mandalorian and, I guess, Episode 7, I can't really think of anything good that's come of this Disney Star Wars era, the new stuff. Because Episode 7 had a lot of potential, and it set up everything beautifully. Not like a 1-to-1 ratio of A New Hope, but good enough, but good enough to where it could build off from there. Rey defeated the weapon, whatever the Death Star was called in The Force Awakens, and now she has to figure out how to defeat Kylo Ren. And it was setting up her training arc, much similar to Luke Skywalker's. And if only they had executed that. Because rather than having them having her go through the same struggles of training and, failing over and over, with new conflicts and an emotional, like, bringing them to the edge of an emotional breakdown or something. They wanted her to be a strong female representation that they just made her unlikable because of how unbelievable it was that she was flawless, pretty much flawless. Was able to defeat Luke Skywalker with no proper training or mastering the Force. Sure, Luke was able to destroy the Death Star within like a week of training, but again, the Death Star wasn't the main conflict. It was the Empire defeating Darth Vader and Emperor Palpatine, and he still had to go through an entire arc, character development. He had 2 masters. He lost his friend Han Solo for a while, and spent like almost 2 years isolated training with Yoda before finally being able to defeat the Empire before it comes back in the sequel. But Episode 7 set things up perfectly, but the execution just did not work. Rey had no proper training. They sidelined other great characters. The actor who played Finn went on a whole rant about how they completely botched his character, which is true. Disney wants to talk about representation, but their representation is just implementing these characters and then not flushing them out, having no real development or anything. And I honestly feel bad for him because Finn was another great character that had a lot of potential that they just completely screwed. And it's why and that's probably why the fandom just, even though Episode 7 objectively was written and had a really good narrative, because of how bad they just botched the overall story in the sequels, is why the fandom just chooses to believe that they don't exist. And frankly, I don't blame them.